So I wanted to start off this interview by asking you, like, what is your name? What is your occupation? And like, how long have you been here in San Diego?
My name is Rodolico. I'm a retired architect, or I was an architect before I retired. And I've been in San Diego since 2001.
So I read what you sent to the mayor, and I totally agree with like what you said. So for the people who haven't like seen it, I was wondering like what is slash like are the problems you are addressing?
Well, when you look at the Maui fire, for example, which Bonnie's letter really was keyed off on that a little bit. And people don't understand that firefighters have a lot of capability, but when there is a conflagration and you have 60-mile-an-hour winds with live embers in a community like University that has a lot of old housing with combustible material, the firefighters can't stop it. It burns right through. We've seen it in Maui recently. We've seen it in California. We've seen it in other states. We've seen entire communities, hundreds, sometimes thousands of homes completely destroyed because firefighters just don't have the capability to stop it. And in University, we have a particular issue with not completing our road system. On the west end, the fires come from the east in this part of the world. If you look at the history of fires, they all come from the east. Our two of our three western exits are missing, and the one western exit we have down the regions goes to San Clemente Canyon, which may be inflamed at the time of the fire, and it may not be a valid exit. So I'm concerned about public safety. I have no compensation. I do this as a volunteer. I am not a paid employee of the University City Fire Safe Council. I am not a lobbyist. I am just a person who is concerned, and I do respond to people when they ask me certain questions.
Yeah, so like what is the I read that you said this to the mayor, so I was wondering like for the people and like the constituents, like what does the mayor, like the government have to like, do with this conversation?
The mayor was involved when he was a city councilman with not having the Regents Road Bridge built. So he's a party to the process. The day the vote occurred, though, he was out of town. In my view, they scheduled the vote for a day when he would be out of town, so he wouldn't have to vote on it. Because he's running for mayor a few years later, and most of the people wanted the bridge. So in order to avoid the negative electoral consequences in the future, they scheduled the vote for a day when he wouldn't be there, so he could say, well, I didn't vote for it or against it. He didn't alienate his topic. So the mayor, I have to zero on the mayor a little bit because he not only has the authority to have the bridge built if he wanted to as a strong mayor, he was also a party to it not being built and putting us all at risk. So I address him cordially. I address him professionally. The tone of my letter tries to be as factual as possible. As a journalist who's had many articles published, I try and condense the information. I try and organize it in a manner in which people can understand. I bring Bonnie's issues into it where they parallel with mine, and I try and build a consensus in the community.
Yeah, as like a journalist myself working with my school's publication, I totally can see like, like where you come from, kind of like what you're trying to do with so much information and having to like condense it. So I was wondering, like, in your eyes, like what should the mayor and like the government do contrary to like what they are doing now?
Well, now, I could give you a full history of why the bridges weren't built. Are you familiar with Route 8, where there's the Westfield Mall and all the
Yeah.
stores? Okay. Route 52 was supposed to have the same configuration where Westfield Mall was supposed to be down. You know where Marion Bear Canyon is? Okay. Route 52, south of University City.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. It's a major road. It parallels 8. It's about 8 miles north. And it was supposed to be the same thing where they get an existing canyon that's pristine. They tear all the trees down. They put in the mall. And malls like to be next to major roads. They like to be next to train stations and bus depots. They want people, they want volume. Well, environmentalists got together and said, no, you cannot have them all there. You have to have it where you have it. And if you're familiar with University City, you'll see the mall is not located in an ideal location. But what the mall did was, as Regents Road, Genesee Avenue had been completed, but when it came up to complete Regents Road Bridge, they said, well, to themselves, if we complete the Regents Road Bridge or let that be completed, we'll have less volume up Genesee. Therefore, we get less parking rates. We have lower rents. So the mall's always fought the Regents Road. So the mall is part of that. And of course, they're a corporation. They got dark money, and they're owned by an Australian company. And I don't know if you're familiar with what happens at a board of directors, but basically managers come in and say, listen, we have all this consensus from a community in America. They don't want this bridge. They don't want this road. If you vote, wait, I got a problem here. Okay. Please vote us to help get rid of this bridge because it will improve your profits. And when everyone, all the board of directors and shareholders hear that they're going to get another 50,000 a year, their hand goes up. Sure, we'll do it. It's in another country. We don't care. So the power is coming from another country. They don't want our road completed. And environmentalists also don't want to complete it. And the other major player is environmentalists. Are you familiar with the Crossroads fire?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, they're the same group that, supported that also doesn't want the bridges built because they believe it'll damage the canyon. So there are those forces, along with people who live next to the road that think their house value will go down if the road is built or there'll be more noise. There are all those other parties. So those are the parties that are making this thing not happen. But the rest of the community, those of us that live here and see how it'll affect our ability to exit community conflagration, it'll improve our ambulance service times if it's built. That goes without saying. We've heard that from first responders. We've heard that from emergency room operators. Actually came to the meeting and told city council, listen, you got to put these bridges in because it'll improve ambulance service times. And I calculate 7 deaths a year based on county data. How many ambulance runs are there? How many can you expect to be something like a heart problem where you have so many minutes to get someone there? And it comes out to about 7 deaths a year with a population of about 40,000 people affected by the road not being built, because the ambulance may be on the south side of the road or the north side of the road when it's needed. And it's the closest one. And it's going to take 2 or 3 minutes to get there. And that 2 or 3 minutes adjusts itself into so many deaths a year. So I'm a community advocate. Now, I've done this once before. I had a similar situation in Philadelphia where I lived before. I had a 5-point intersection turned into a 4-point and a 3. There were major car accidents because of the intersection. I had support of the business community. I had support of all but one church group. And I had support of the CDCs and other community groups. I only missed one. And I was able to get that through. I pushed that through. But here in University, the mall doesn't want it with their dark money. The environmentalists don't want it. The planning group doesn't want it. A lot of the major groups don't want these roads built. So it's much more difficult to get these roads put in because of the lack of agreement that they should be built.
Yeah, so also in your email to the mayor, you mentioned that like both the government and like the UC property owners need to step up. So could you like break down like the actions in your eyes like each side must take to like tackle these issues?
Well, the mayor really just has to complete the originally planned roads and give us our exits out of the community as originally planned. It's a very simple thing for the municipality to visualize, but politically, it'll affect donations if he goes for reelection. I don't see any action before his reelection at all because he does not want to alienate his supporters. And those of us who want the bridge, we don't have an option to vote for anyone who really wants the bridge. No politician except myself. I did run for city council. I did try and make it an issue, and I wasn't very successful. So that's what can happen on the political end. On the individual end, we as homeowners can begin to harden our buildings against fire. We can I share screen for a second? I have something I want to show you.
Yeah, definitely. Share screen. Go ahead. I might need a
Okay, share screen. All right. Okay, I'm going to show you this one here. Share. All right. Can you see this picture?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a masonite piece. This was how the house was built. It had these vertical pieces in front of it and was painted. And this will, if there's high radiant heat, which there will be in a conflagration, this will flash and burn. We're replacing it with a cement tile, I mean, cement shingle here. And we're doing the whole house in non-combustible materials. This will be a cement shingle. There's brick here. This will be cement shingle here. We wrap our corners in aluminum. Okay. That's one thing homeowners can do. The other thing is right here is our irrigation controller. The one thing I learned from the Maui fire is these irrigation controllers melt during a fire. Zero in a little bit here. These irrigation controllers melt in a fire and then just start shooting out water, which lowers the pressure. So that's one thing we can do as homeowners. The other thing we can do, now this is in response, this is from another group of community people who are interested in certain things. They have issues with, well, what happens if my neighbor has all these big trees right next? What happens if house A has a neighbor, house B, that has all these trees, and if there's a fire, they'll burn their house? Well, this is a graphic that I'm sending to the fire people, and I'm trying to get them to say, well, how about this as an answer? We do something like this where we limit the height of a tree when it's next to someone else's property, so there's a 90-degree open view of sky. And it's one answer. I know it's not the ultimate answer, but it's a way of possibly doing it. All right, so I don't have to share anymore. So you can take away share screen if you like.
Yeah, so I think I remember reading your email that you talked like the sprinkler valves and like the fire hydrant and kind of like how they melted. So I was wondering, could you, and you also mentioned something about a biologist led like exploration of brush management. So my next question is like, how does the like exploration fit into like the idea like your safety story and like your email as a whole?
That was kind of you're a little garbled there. How it affects safety. Is that
Like, yeah, how does like the biologist led like exploration, how does it like fit into your safety story and like your email as a whole?
okay? Well, the biologist we hired a biologist. We have a grant. Well, we have to know that there is a problem. So we hired a biologist, and they went through and they examined all of the area we considered to be the most important area to examine. We didn't have enough money to do the entire community, but we do know that the flames will come from the northeast and they will head towards the southwest. So we got those northeast facing slopes and we had those all examined. And the biologist gave back their report, which is if you go to the University City Fire Safe Council, you'll see a brush management report button. You can hit that and you can read the report yourself. And it basically shows all the areas that need brush management. So we know we have a problem, and it's a serious problem. So, and then we go to the community with that. We present to the planning group, to various groups within the community. We say, okay, here's our issue. We want your support with the fire department and city agencies to do brush management in these areas that we've discovered, plus everywhere else where the city has a border with a private property. Now, the city owns the open space park, Rose Canyon, for example, and they are responsible for everything on their property that's within 100 feet of a building. And they are not just responsible for it once in a while. It's an ongoing responsibility. It's like painting lines or filling up potholes. They have to maintain it. And they have not been. And it's a problem. So we're trying to get them to maintain it. Now, we did have the Friends of Rose Canyon meeting, and their response was, well, they rip up the species they shouldn't rip up. They don't touch the invasive species. They don't know what they're doing. We don't want them working there. Okay. So we have this conflict about the city not being able to do it properly from people who have observed. And then we have people who live next to these spaces who say, no, they're not doing anything. They come there and sometimes they're just playing baseball or something in one of the cul-de-sacs. They're really not doing the job. So we really need to get the city to take this seriously, because if a conflagration does come to our community, the first line of buildings that are going to be burned are those on the perimeter of the canyons. So that's another priority for us.
Yeah, so as the time is like running up, I want to ask you, are you running for any position in the 2024 election?
I do not think I will win because my party doesn't think bridges and things like that are important goals. And they tend not to run on those issues. They run on other things. I may run simply to advertise these issues and get more people here, which is kind of the main reason why. I've always known my party won't support me. In my view, the Democratic Party in San Diego is essentially one that pushes Republican values, such as in lieu fees for housing, preventing low cost housing from being built, and other issues, which are really Republican kind of issues. So the Democratic Party, to me, locally, the Democratic Party is more Republican. Nationally, I see, and state, I see the Democratic Party is acting with democratic values.
Yeah, so my last question is like, is there anything else you want to tell me?
Well, I wish you luck. If you want to send me some of your writings, I like to see how good you are at condensing information. If you find a teacher who is good at helping students understand how to compress information and find the logical path in your school, I suggest you seek that teacher out for their counsel and possibly get in their class. Because some of the best journalists I've seen are people who are able to get a thought, condense it down into information that has good flow, is compressed, and of course is not biased, tends to be open to the various issues in a manner which they don't overexpress or underexpress what needs to be done. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Rodolico.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.